Hello everyone, I'm Coyote Jack, and I saw this one yesterday, and I thought that probably you are sticking to this at the end of this video. You are going to laugh and probably get angry if you used to be a soyny fan. So, what's the context of this? Since soyny is being the it's still being the punchback of everyone on across the internet. Why? Because the shit show that is Concord. So I hope you have something to drink, or at least to be enjoyed. So I'm just going to give you my 5 cent opinion and rata. Probably. I just hope you enjoy it. Since let's start with this. Since first these images, the comparison that Atari ET game that almost crashed the gaming industry in the 1983. Since because that game mm, started to lose the trust of gamers for future games until Nintendo stood in. And then current day the crash is fucking crapcore. And I want you to focus on this since Mango Lawyer shared this. You're laughing? Sony lost 400 million on Concord and you're laughing? And that's the key reason or why we are going to just keep ripping on Sony. Because we estimated that the money they spent on Concord was around 100 million to 250 million dollars in fucking 8 years. Well, we have this one, and it's appropriate to rise up the volume here. And well, it is one. I just hope you probably you already heard this one. So, Colin Moriarty. I spoke with extensively with someone who worked on Concord, and it's so much worse than you think. It was internally referred to as the future of PlayStation with Star Wars like potential. If you think of fucking Disney Star Wars, just like RGE pointed out, and deep culture of toxic positivity. This main one, oh man, first let's hear this.
Who really gives a shit? However, and I don't do journalism really anymore, as you guys know, and we talk about this a lot. I was a journalist at one time, and I used to break a lot of stories, and these days I don't really grind like that. So the stories that I break these days are usually people, always, not usually, always people coming to me. And someone who worked on Concord reached out to me, and I verified who this person was and went through all that and talked to this person extensively, for a long time. And got some, I think, interesting information that I can share about Concord. And I think people will be interested about it. The reason that I wanted to talk about it is because some of the assumptions that I had made about the game were dead wrong as far as how much it cost and how much Sony really lost on it. So the big thing that you really need to know here about this is that Concord cost about $400 million to make.
So keep that in mind. All the franchise Sony killed, and they were better prospects than fucking Crapcord. That they're currently still being sitting on a fucking basement at Sony HQ headquarters in California. And also, pay attention to that the Japanese studio died because one fucking Californian managed to get to a high power position at Sony as a directive or in charge of developing video games. And he killed a Japanese studio. But hey, Crapcore, he believed in that shit.
Oh my god.
And the story goes that Concord, by the time Concord was, so in the first quarter of 2023, Concord had basically entered an alpha state. This was before Sony had.
Alpha state. So imagine hiring retarded, incapable idiots. I'm not going to deny that I have my problems with development. Sometimes I I can be much of a retard if I'm being honest, but to this level of incompetence and brag about that, dude, I can make this shit. You are duffing me? Go fuck yourself. No, I accept my capacities and my vulnerabilities. Well, my weakness and my my best skills. Let's just say. And those fuckers, they couldn't acknowledge that, but hey, they were milking a paycheck every single day. Keep that in mind.
Had even purchased the team. But Sony had been working with Probably Monsters, and which was the original owner of Firewalk, and Firewalk
And because that fucking $400 million is not making it count for how much Sony paid for the studio, because Sony paid for the studio and the money for development, which this dude is saying $400 million, came after. We don't know how much Sony spent on fucking crapcore studio. Probably never we will, or probably later this year we will know. As soon as more people come out with this sort of information.
Walk, probably since late 2020, maybe 2021 at the latest on Concord. The game was in development before that. Up to the point that the game went into alpha state, they had already spent about $200 million on it. And it's unclear how much of that money is from Probably Monsters and the original investors into the game and how much of that money was from Sony. There's this term in product development, not only with games, but really with everything. You can like manufacture a tchotchke.
Not only cost development, also advertising and all the marketing shit, the printing of the copies. They spent a lot of fucking money.
You guys might have heard of it. It's called minimum viability or minimum viable product. The idea behind this, or MVP, the idea behind this is that this is like what you're trying to achieve, and it's like once you cross this barrier, you feel comfortable selling it. It's not that it's the best it can be, or that it's what it's going to be by the time you launch it, because there's all sorts of extra stuff you do to it. But this is the minimum viability of the product. When
I don't know viability, more like if it's fucking sustainable. Well, of course, we know that fucking crapcore wasn't sustainable at the end of the day. It's a fucking Lloyd service. Lloyd service depends so much on how much people play that shit, how many times spent on it, and also money, because the only way to actually make sustainable, since it's a Lloyd service again, it depends on fucking servers running. That's why those fucking games are expensive. Despite that could be the most crappiest gameplay you could have ever foreseen. Crapcore, of course, show, but that still is you need to run those servers. I wonder who said, yeah, apart from Bungie, who was the fucking idiot that said factions was better than this? Because I have to say, I fucking say Sony for how also they destroyed not only Serrancadura, The Last of Us. But I have to say, factions had better survival because they still had a better fan base than fucking Crapcore.
when the game had already had $200 million spent on it and was basically in an alpha form in quarter one of 2023, from that point until the game launched, Sony spent another $200 million on it.
More dumping more money for the bad rather than the good.
The scuttlebutt behind the scenes about Concord is that the game was in a laughable shape when it was shown. And basically, like when the alpha was ready to go and they were kind of being like, we're ready to kind of get moving towards getting this thing out in the next year or two, it was in such horrible shape that Sony felt like they needed to spend that much money again. So, 200 plus 200 to get the game to the MVP status, not to the status of it being like a great game, to get it to just viability. And that at that time in quarter one, 2023, there was nothing done.
So there was just not progress there because again, I have to say, they were hiring fucking idiots from the far left that they didn't know jack shit about coding probably, and they were just there because of nepotism and connections. And because look, we have the better politics instead of you are competent in what you're doing. Because I know from experience that in some workplaces like NTI, at least where in my case for my country, we had lots of disagreements with among politics because we have this polarizing aspect of of the political landscape that yeah, our country is going to get into shit. Who are you voting for? But again, at least in those places you had people disagreeing, but also being competent. In this case, for fucking Fireworks Studios, that wasn't the case. They were just hiring based on politics instead of, well, are you a fucking competent coder? You already know the answer to that.
A major expense was having to urgently outsource much of the game to other studios to finish building the game out. And that two fundamental things were not worked on at all up to the point in which the game was shown in alpha. Onboarding, nothing about that. No, like there was nothing about how players get on, like how they make their character, all that kind of stuff, or choose their character and get there. And monetization, two very expensive, very specific and boutique.
What I studied of how to make video games since I'm getting more into it because I want to comprehend it. So in the future, I could probably create something I really want people to enjoy. I realized that most of the shit not only depends on how you develop core gameplay, it is based on what kind is the art concept of this. And you already have seen how much the art style of Crapcore was. So they imagine you are heading into that shit and you're like, yeah, we are going to develop the most boring, generic piece of garbage that is not even going to work properly. And I'm just like, why those fucking executives studying? Alright, because they didn't want to have accountability.
Things that happen to games like this. And so that's the first thing that I wanted to say is that it's not only about the ongoing cost, which would be in the millions to keep the game going per month, but that the game cost about $400 million to make, soup to nuts. Sony put most of that money in, and it is not only so because we had kind of said like this must be Sony's biggest loss ever on a game, and it is. It's the biggest game.
It's the biggest flop. It's the biggest failure of the entire history of video games. It's the entire gaming crash in current year that is bigger than it. This is the biggest collapse for a company because I have to say I saw Sega that they were almost pulling a fucking crapcore with hyenas. If you don't know what hyenas was or never came to be, was a fucking LDHDTB homosexual pedophile game that were appealing for fucking drags, all the homosexual stereotypical market. That was hyenas. And Sega spent like more than $100 million on it because they didn't check on the studio that was located in fucking United Kingdom, the famous country for being known as you do have a license to have a knife, mate. You have a license to have a fucking burger, mate. That sort of place was developing that fucking dog shit of a project. And soon as fucking Sega, despite that Sega is also going into AESG globalist route, the executives at Japan said, this is going to sink us. We will never have a chance to ever recover. Even if AESG ends at some point on the next years, and we are going back to make something that people like and avoid this fucking pandering. Well, if we release hyenas, it's going to make that impossible. We wouldn't even have a fucking future. Despite that hyenas was almost released. It was like 2 months to be released. Sega saw that shit and not kill it with fire. We don't want that shit. We are going to get fucking destroyed forever. And Soyny said, yeah, the executives believe in on this, and between talking points, they believe it that, yeah, this is going to be the future of PlayStation. Craftcore did so much fucking damage to Soyny. This damage that you are witnessing right now is proof that is a damage that is have zero chance to even be reversed or ever even be recovered. They don't have chance to ever recover from this. Why? Because they lost a lot of fucking money. That's the first one. The second one, investors are not happy with Sony right now because of the money they have lost. That's going back to the first one. And the third one that is also circulates about the first one is that people thought what they were looking at. Of course, even normies are so fed up with the globalist agenda that is the fucking woke ideology. And of course, Concord is not. It's very obvious how that shit was so embedded with it. So investors saw that and just like, well, customers don't want that, and at this point, I cannot afford to lose more money. Then comes the fourth one. You had Sony directives that are just telling low key, telling to investors, yeah, we are so fucking stupid and we had like projects like this, but hey, give us money. Customers walked away. The only thing that's the thing. For the future to come from what's left from Sony, because I estimated that Sony is going to be in bankrupt at least in 5 or 4 years. Probably is even going to be bankrupt of the next year because Crapcore speed up that process. How? Because what I was saying, and this dude said, directives at Sony bet this game is going to be the future of PlayStation. And look how that flopped. And they are just telling to everyone face, this is what we are going to put in the fucking future. Are you ever wondered how Sega was just smart compared to fucking Sony when they canceled Hyenas? Even if they spent all that fucking money, honestly, it would have been better just shutting down everything, cutting the heads rolling, and probably they would even have a salvageable way to success. Because I have to say, after all this shit that is has been coming out after the fucking fiasco that is Concord, Sony doesn't have a chance in the future. This is the end.
Game Sony's ever released from a budgetary standpoint from the first party or second party. So let that sink in.
It's crazy.
And it's totally unintuitive. There are games that are in development right now at Sony first and second party that are more expensive than this. But as of the games that have come out so far, so think about like Spider-Man 2 and so on and so forth. We know The Last of Us Part 2 cost $220 million. Spider-Man 3 is going to cost about $350 million. This game costs more than that. And they lost all of it because they made no money. They made about $1 million gross revenue. And then they gave it all back. So this is a huge, multiple hundreds of millions of dollar loss. Now the question is, why? Why did this happen? This game was heavily championed behind the scenes. Now we know this because Sony ended up, what's funny is that the game is presented in Q1 2023 as this, we're kind of getting towards the end. The game is nowhere near being done. It's in a horrible position. And then Sony buys the team. The idea behind this was, and the term apparently verbatim had been used.
I have to wonder how Fire will manage it to even sell themselves out, since from what this dude is speaking, it's like, dude, I'm betting on a dead horse. Why did you are giving me a dead horse? Why? what kind of fucking executive? Probably could bet that there was some nepotism there because probably one of these fucking retard bookies that only have politics as their own persona. The executives they were like, yeah, I know that guy. I'm going to have him. We are so smart. And I have to say, those like this that saying, even The Last of Walk 2, God of Walk, Ragnarok, those games costed like close to that. but not much. Didn't make that money, but at the same time, they at least did some return of money in that regard. At least they sold copies whenever you like it or not. I have to admit, it sold, and probably it still keeps selling. Not like a fucking $60 or $70, but it's still making money despite that fucking concern with the development costs. Rapcore didn't have that chance. They even had to return the money that was spent.
That Concord is the future of PlayStation. That they had such major ambition for this game that it was referred to internally as a Star Wars-like project for Sony. That it can be repeatedly revisited over and over and over again, not only in cross media, but in what we were seeing. We've already kind of seen little bits of it. So
And that's my concern. How fucking retard you have to be, because even I have to point out that Sega is jumping into globalist agenda, but I have to say, when it comes to indoctrination, at least they are even willing to tell to the competent developers to, hey, put the pander in there in our next products, but at the same time, release something that is just half decent despite it's heavily censored. I needed to rant on fucking Sega in that regard. Fuck you, Atlus. But I have to say that they have to at least put some decent amount of effort to make their games sort of likable for the most normie casual player base. Soyny was the opposite. They said, yeah, this shit is just fucking great. They drank the Kool-Aid. They believe it, the fucking lies that they were supposed to just spread, not fucking need of drink of that. They drank in a fucking hole, and that hole was full of shit.
the weekly story vignettes that they were going to release, and then of course the inclusion in Amazon's Secret Levels anthology.
And also what they spent on fucking Amazon to make some fucking skit of crapcore in one of their shows.
That's like just scratching the surface of it. Ironically, the game was codenamed Chaos behind the scenes. And a major thing about the game is that there was, and I think we can kind of get this vibe from just the nature of the people making it and kind of the way the game reads and all that, a toxic positivity vibe.
That one. That one is like, I'm not going to deny, it triggers me to certain capacity. Because I've been in places in, at work where they say things are going to get better. You have to be positive. You have to be positive. While I'm being screwed out by my fucking employer, not paying my paychecks, and I'm just just eating dirt just to survive the next week or even the fucking month, because electricity bills, oh man, how that shit has been skyrocketing. Cost, the billing of that shit, well, it's over the years it turned more insane and insane. And just like, I need a fucking workplace that is just floating my ass, and I'm not even having some paycheck. They even owe me 2 months of paychecks. I'm just like, for going back to fucking crap court, they weren't allowed to criticize that this shit is fucking dog shit. We are not going to sell copies in this shit. If you put fucking Snowbreak, that shit is making all the money. And even I heard and saw that they are just going back in track, and since now they have that 18 plus tag, they have all the freedom of creativity to just put everything to make the most amount of money that you could ever see in current year. But for Crapcore, they say, yeah, this is great. And if you dare to criticize it, since I have stated so much that all those fucking Western studios, especially from the AAA and the legacy gaming industry, are communists, are far left lunatics. They behave just like the fucking Soviets in Russia. When they didn't like someone, they just only thing that they could use to just get rid of them. And an easy way was just accuse them of being something. They are anti-government. They are anti-patriotic, and they will stray at Minecraft. Then, if you fucking dare to criticize them in current, for example, that fucking woman in Crapcore. My pronouns are professor. You should address me as professor. If you say fuck, they were going straight to HR, the human resource staff, and since they are indoctrinated as well because they are installed by fucking BlackRock at the end of the day, this fucking retarded brain dead piece of shit will come out to HR and say, this dude struggles not on me. He raped me. And that dude got straight fired. And if that wasn't enough, even if he proved it, you know what? I already proved this fucking bitch is lying, but I'm not going to put up with your shit. I'm out. And you leave that fucking company. What happened with that fucking piece of shit? It doesn't end. It's just going to keep following your tracks, following your steps, and when you find a job in another place, that fucking piece of shit is going to call your employer and they are going to say, you are aware that you hired a racist? Racist? And I just need to, man, I can't put so much effort in my voice right now, but you get the drill. They are like this. So they wouldn't even dare to criticize that shit. And the directives, they just drank the Kool-Aid. And this is just what you needed to hear right now because we are going to see this shit that probably you are just going to get angry at the end of the day because of how much even you were used to be a fan of Soyny, probably you're going to laugh or get angry. And here it comes. GTA cost development. GTA 5. 265 million US dollars. And I enjoy it that game. And I enjoy it online despite all the fucking mistakes that they put out with that shit. Fucking GTA 5 costed that amount. Rapcore 400 million plus the cost of buying the studio. Elden Ring development cost. They made $504 million with a budget of $200 million. Two fucking Elden Rings! Crystal Metal in the past didn't even need $1 million. And that shit was great. Killzone 2 budget was originally 20 US dollars. And they spent more like 40 to $45 million. And that shit mops the floor in gameplay and physics. Motorstone, we don't have that. But Drive Club, at least, they spend like $210 million. I could say, yeah, for a racing game, especially from a niche crowd, probably that shit was not a good idea. But I have to say, Drive Club mops the floor with Gran Turismo 7. And this one, that you're going to get pissed off. Because I just put that query of Gravity Rush development cost. Gravity Rush 2 probably had 121 million budget. So what was spent is just now this. One fucking dollar for a piece of paper holder. It's just that's it. That's all I wanted to share here with you. If you took for the end of this video. Honestly, I appreciate you for doing so. And this is just a reminder that soyny bankruptcy is just as near as fucking Ubisoft bankruptcy state. Well, anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you have a pretty good weekend. And please take care.